Designed from the ground up, the D'Addario Backline Gear Transport Pack is the ultimate solution for players on the move. With more than 8 specialized storage and transport compartments built right in, it makes getting everything to the gig painless and intuitive.
Loud and Proud with Nick Lee of Moontooth. Nick, how you doing?
Good, Chris. Thanks, man. How are you?
Real good, man. If you're familiar with Moontooth, you probably caught a little bit of odd-out angles there. Nick, I know that you've been a long-time Vigier user, also a descendant from the Les Paul, clearly with style the guitar is there. Talk to me about how this became your #1 and how you got lined up with the French guitar company.
Yeah, so grew up playing Les Paul Standard. That was like my first real deal guitar I was gigging on, and I can get into that one maybe after the Vigiers, but I still have that. It's like a studio guitar, but I retired it from the stage because it just was getting very beat up over the years. And was in between guitars for a little while, and my friend DJ Scully, who is the U.S. artist rep for Vigier, he was my friend, Moontooth's longtime friend. We were playing with his band Dead Empires a lot, and he went on to be in the number 12 Looks Like You, and we've toured with them. We're just old friends, and he, was working for Vigier, who I was only very vaguely familiar with because of him. And, he was like, let you borrow one, and if you like it, I'll see what I can do. And so that was this other black one I'll show you in a sec. That was the first. It was sort of a loaner, and then I think after a year or two of touring with me, that it became mine, because nobody wants it anymore because it's kind of beat up. Yeah. But I mean, that's not true, but not that no one wants it anymore, but whatever. I still have it. It's a loaner. But anyway, yeah, I just love them. Like, apart from just playing great, I mean, it's got everything I love about the Les Paul. It's got the weight, the style, the body style, the 2 humbuckers. But the Vigier, the biggest talking point I feel like is the no truss rod. So you have, they call it the 90-10 split. It's 90% maple neck. This one has a rosewood fingerboard, but 90% maple neck, 10% carbon fiber. So there's no truss rod. There's no adjusting on the road. As soon as I set my intonation on these saddles here, like I'm good to go for many tours, and even if I'm sometimes, like, in addition to Moontooth, I also play in the band Riot, and so moving from standard tuning, slight adjustment of intonation and good to go. Like, I never have to worry about the neck getting out of whack, on the road, going from like the trailer in Austin in July to an air-conditioned venue. It's like, I'm good to go. I've put it under airplanes without detuning it and stuff like that when I've had to, and still in tune when I get to, it's freezing cold, but still totally in tune. So I'm definitely pretty pragmatic with my choices and touring and stuff. It's like, what's going to take the abuse and still sound great and still stay in tune. And, the Vigiers are beyond capable of that. And they also take a beating really well, because I'm a little rough on guitars, and myself, and, they get the best of the best shows and the worst of the worst shows at times. So, they're luckily, like, I can't break these. That's great. And, they're just like beautiful, beautiful guitars. They play so well. On all the little details, like Teflon nut that pops in and out. It's got like a little like male and female piece. So you just pop it out, pop a new one in when they get shitty, or if you're going to bigger, like a larger string size or smaller string size, they make them so it's just perfectly tight. And, I think at one point this one took a spill and had a little dent in the nut, and I just, pop it in, push a new one in, and I'm done. It's not like no gluing and setting and any of that stuff that I would not trust myself to do. Other than that, I mean, so I should probably talk about the colors. This is part of the Rock Art series that they did, which, it's like a dip, and
Okay.
Our first full-length record is called Chromaparagon. It's got like this kind of wild wolf head thing on it, and I think it was DJ's idea to ask Patrice Vigier, who's the master builder. He is, Vigier Guitars. He said, what if we took the colors from that record and did a rock art GV for you? Because I was still using the loaner, and this was going to be my first sort of Nick Lee guitar or whatever. So it was essentially, the GV rock, but with the rock art. And it's funny because if you look at that cover, the yellow is the least amount of color that is on it, but it just happened to, this is what I got, and it's super cool. I mean, the neck is especially came out amazing, so they basically just, you have some sort of vat of these colors, they dip the body and they dip the neck, and it's just how it comes out.
It kind of reminds me of like the Steve Vai has done that with like his gem stuff and of the Ibanez.
Yeah, totally. And I would never have guessed that I was going to play a really colorful guitar. But I couldn't say no to that opportunity to have like the album cover colors as a guitar. This area got like kind of, you can see this got really beat up. It's kind of chipped, but it kind of was, the paint was getting kind of ruined. And I actually had my buddy, Paul Motisi, who did the album cover to Crux. He found these colors and just made it even trippier, which I was really, really stoked on. And then, so on the album Crux that we did, we worked with Mark Morton of Lamb of God and Machine. They kind of tag teamed the pre-production with us, and talking to Mark about guitars, and they brought up his DiMarzio Dominions at some point. And Machine had said like, yeah, that's like one of the best pickups I've ever heard. And he asked me, he was like, will you use two if I give them to you? And I was like, yeah, I will for sure. And so I put those in this one, which I'll show you in a sec, but they came in yellow, so that also worked out really well for this guitar. And these are the Mark Morton Dominions. I've since started working officially with DiMarzio, and they've been very accommodating and cool to me as far as just giving me what I need and just little details on things of like just helping me out. But so these are the Mark Morton Dominions, and they just have like all the clarity I want, but all the bite I want. Plenty of like nice mids. It's not like I like high output passive pickups. That's always just what I liked. And yeah, I mean, they sound amazing. It just gets everything I really want out of cleans and dirty sounds. And neck pickup has that great kind of woolly Les Paul-ish sound, but it's got its own thing too.
Cool. Well, before we kind of dive into more sounds of this, I'm curious about what you use for strings and then different tunings, because I know, like, specific, you brought up that first record, Chroma, the song had like a really unusual tuning, if I can remember right.
Yeah, if I can remember what that tuning is.
Walk us through the different tunings you use, and then the strings you use.
Yeah, so this guitar does most of basically all of our stuff starts at D standard. Growing up, a lot of the stuff we wrote was in like drop C. And then over time, getting we still have some drop C songs, but just kind of getting bored of a lot of those songs end up in the same key. And so eventually we just came up to D standard, and then there was a lot of new ideas that came out of that. But anyway, so most of the songs start in D standard and get manipulated from there. Okay. For the D standard stuff, I use 11 through 56 Ernie balls, which I do like a custom set. They have 11 through 54, I think, is their beefy slinkies, but that G string was a little too big, and then the E string was a little too small. So I do 11, 14, 20, plain, 32, 44, and 56 on this guitar. Okay. And then the drop A stuff, I just moved the 56 up to a 60. So it's D standard with a drop A, and so that one's a 60. And yeah, everything's 56. So D standard, drop C. There's a song called Through Ash where I move the B string down a half step and the high E string down a full step, and it ends up giving you almost like a half open. I mean, technically F because I'm dropped, but I just think of it as G minor. If I play a G like this on the bottom and then the top of the guitar, it just sounds like a minor chord. And that just, some of those things just come out of just like I have a cool riff and it's in this key, and then I get to the verse and I have an idea, but it's like impossible in the tuning, so I'll just move the string, and then you have a few more tunings to deal with. There's the Chroma song, so Ray, our drummer, is also a killer guitar player and writer. And so he put a couple songs in open C major, C, G, C, E, G, C, which was kind of like Allman Brothers tuning. We love that song Little Martha, and that's kind of where that tuning originally came from. So that if you hear songs like Igneous or Offered Blood, those are open C major. And then he wrote a tuning. The song was called Fac Gac Forever because it was F-A-C-G-A-C, all sharp with like a low F sharp on the bottom. And people are always like, why don't you ever play that song? It's like, well, that's kind of why, is they have to bring one guitar in Fac Gac, and we'll get there eventually. But yeah, it also just keeping the F sharp on the bottom tamed is a pain in the ass. But it sounds really cool, you know, whatever that ends up being, like a 9 chord or something. It's just really, you know, we love, especially Ray, like kind of writes more from just being inspired by a tuning or a pedal and stuff. And you know, I maybe approached it a little bit more from the music theory end of things at times, but, you know, changing one string always just comes out. You get new voicings of chords and whatever, you know. But yeah, and then drop A and drop G to the D standard. And actually, a few of these guitars for the new album, I have standard drop B. So
okay.
More tunings, more problems to deal with.
More tunings, more problems.
Yeah.
Just like Notorious B.I.G. said.
Yeah.
But but before we move on to anything else, I'm curious how it feels to have, you're the main guitar player in the band, you know, on stage, you're the only guy playing guitar. But how does that feel having Ray as a second guitarist? And you said he's, you know, up to par on your level as a writer and player. So that's almost like having a second guitarist in a one guitar band. Yeah,
I mean, it's just especially important in the writing and pre-production state. I mean, Ray also engineers all our records. So thus far, he's mixed and mastered everything you've ever heard, and we've recorded it. I'm at his partner Anthony, who you met earlier. This is their studio in Farmingdale, New York, Westfall Recording Company. Everything up until this point we've recorded here. So he has the wizard brain, you know, for most things musical and engineering wise. But yeah, I mean, it's really just like, you know, he'll just kind of have, you know, basically how we write is it's like I have some riffs and Ray has some riffs. And then at this point, it's like eventually they get to John, and, you know, when John will be really inspired, he'll write vocals and melodies. And that kind of is what pushes a song along. So it's always like kind of a collaboration. But, you know, so like when Ray writes stuff, it's often like, okay, I learn it, and then I'll kind of, I'll either add or, you know, if it's missing a bridge, maybe I'll add a bridge. Or if, you know, like Musketeers is a song on Crux, like that was all Ray, but I just added the melody part on the chorus. So it's like, it's awesome, you know. It's like, because if I was the only one writing the riff material, you know, I feel like you would be losing like some key Moontooth songs, you know, like Igneous and Musketeers. Those are Ray, you know. It's like, but we've been playing together since we were 13. You know, I'm 31 now. You know, it's like we basically really answer each other's sentences musically. You know, so it's like we almost write to each other's strengths.
Yeah, you guys are like speaking the same language at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you had mentioned the Dominions. I'd love to hear kind of different pickup selections that how you use it. I'm sure most of the time you're in the bridge, but like you said, you do use the neck pickup too. So walk us through that kind of different sounds. Yeah,
sure. Like at all angles, the song I was just playing, that's actually a neck pickup song, but mostly I'm on the bridge. So you can kind of hear there's a lot of bite on the bridge.
Yeah.
But still, like a clarity, you know, like we have some really busy riffs, and they always like all the notes cut through, which is really what I'm mainly looking for. And then neck and pickup gets used for leads a lot.
Now, what about like a song Rhythm and Roar? Is that a different guitar setup, or is that sounds to me like a neck pickup, that main riff on Rhythm and Roar?
Yeah, good ear, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely neck pickup on this guitar. I don't know how obvious it is when you listen to Moontooth, but it's like, we get like the prog metal thing, but me and Ray like loved sludge and doom and stoner rock for, like still do. And so that kind of, that's, I don't know, like Ray is the technical wizard. So if I say a word like, the guitar needs to be more like peanut buttery, he knows exactly what to do. And that's what that sound is that really thick, woolly, like neck pickup sound.
I mean, it's because you had said that in an interview with Premier Guitar, and I think you've graduated through that with Crux. But didn't you guys used to always describe your sound as aggressive progressive or progressive aggressive?
Aggressive progressive was, yeah, that was the term for that record, Chromaparagon, which is, I think, when I did the interview with Premier. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's such a cop-out, but we kind of just want to be a rock and roll band, I mean, it was always kind of like that. I mean, most of what we love is classic rock and 70s, 80s metal, and not necessarily the newer. I mean, we love everything, but it's more like of that school, of that train of thought, and a big part of what I think I try to do as a guitar player, especially the one guitar player in the band, is bridge the old school with what sounds chunky and modern and heavy, and kind of take like Iommi and Jimmy Page and Hetfield and Dime, and then like all those things, and try to find a place where they all work. Not to mention all the clean guitar stuff.
Dimebag meets Steve Howe, like with Yes, and then you got like you said. I know that you guys are big fans, and you not collaborate, but friends with like Mastodon, so that comes in there too, like that kind of heavy sludge stuff.
Oh yeah, Mastodon was a really big one, and they kind of did that thing, it was like sludgy-ish, doom-ish stuff, but there was really thrashy stuff, and then there was all that finger-picked clean stuff that was just really inspiring to me, because I was just starting to get into like Chet Atkins and things like that were like totally opposite side of the spectrum. And then here's Brent Hinds like playing chicken picking bluegrass licks in this brutal metal song. So it was like, it really kind of, Leviathan, that record totally like opened my mind to how far you could go with like extreme metal. I wouldn't, I'm sure people would say we're extreme metal, but trying to take the elements of that we love the most, and keep that, we have a great singer. So we love writing like songs with hooks and good vocals and stuff, but it's like keeping the brutal stuff brutal, I guess, is, keeping all of that, now, under the hood, so to speak.
Now with the finger picking stuff, is that like your attempt at the title track, Crux? Because that song has a lot of clean picking.
Yeah, that's that one is A on the bottom and then C on top. So there's a bit of a weird tuning there. Motionless in Sky is another one. Like I can give you some finger pick stuff. Let's see here. That's Motionless in Sky off of Crux. That song is the first song with no pick. Actually, that's at the end is a pick, but Through Ash also no pick. I did a little classical guitar with my teacher growing up, and then a little bit in college. So I got a little bit of the right hand working, and then getting into things like Mastodon and then bluegrass and country and stuff kept me doing that.
Now, I will ask this, but I won't have you answer it because I'm already curious how you manage volume disparities because, you know, your loud, heavy, crunchy sound is going to be way louder. So I'm curious how that involves. But before we get there in the pedals stuff, Nick, will you want to grab another guitar, maybe the other Vigier, and talk to us about that and show us what you do with that?
So yeah, this is the first Vigier they gave me, which is also a G.V. Rock, also with Dominion, DiMarzio Dominion pickups in it. Oh, I forgot to mention that I put the newest Vigier I have has these like locking input jacks, which is fun. You know, I don't have too much problem with pulling cables out live, but even just like sitting on the couch teaching a lesson or recording, you just move the wrong way and you're pulling your cable out. Like, this is great. You need to push down to pull the cable out. Little ingenuity, things like that. Also, the looks like this one fell off, but the other one has a little a fuzzy like strip for dampening behind the nuts. You get rid of some of that noise. So I forgot to mention on the other Vigier, I've always strung my strings over the tailpiece because I love that extra noise, and also like bending notes behind there.
Yeah, you did that in the intro.
Yeah, so that's like the telly trick. You know, you do the third and then you bend it back here. But I can't do that on these guitars, but it works fine as long as these are strung the right way. As we were recording, I experimented with putting them back standard stringing just to see if it helped with intonation. It definitely affects the tension of the strings, but it's nothing too drastic. I kind of just learned it from, you know, Zach Wilde in Guitar Magazine's talking about you break less strings on your saddles if you string them this way. And he was also...
I know Joe Bonamassa does that too.
Yeah, it's just been the move ever since. But this is my newest Vigier. This is an Excalibur Ultra Blues. This is my first ever like Strat style guitar. So when they told me that, you know, I could put, you know, an order something new in for the, you know, the new record cycle, I really wanted to try a Strat. You know, I didn't like grow up into Strats, but the more I played, the more chances I get to pick one up here and there. It was just like, I like the way that they kind of make you work for it a little harder. You know, the more you dig in, like the way Stevie Ray Vaughan plays or something, it's like the harder you hit it, it's like the more you get out of the guitar. But yeah, first ever kind of Strat style, first ever humbucker single, first like trem bridge I've ever really... my first ever guitar was a BC Rich Mockingbird with a Floyd Rose, which was a terrible guitar to have at like 10, 11 years old because it was just like so confusing to me, and I wanted to tune to like drop B. But yeah, I love it.
Now, what are the pickups in this one, Nick?
Oh yeah, so the bridge is a vintage PAF, or virtual PAF, sorry, DiMarzio. And then this is a vintage DP 415, I think it's called. These two were stock for the guitar. The only one I changed was the neck. I put a DiMarzio chopper in there, which they recommended just because I was missing like just a fat, aggressive neck pickup sound for leads. Okay. And actually that was like one of the coolest things DiMarzio did for me is like these routes in this guitar are really tight. And so any kind of, what do they call it, the flange or whatever around the pickup, the trim around it, was not going to happen unless I rerouted the guitar. And I really didn't want to do that because I didn't really want to cut this guitar. It's like the most beautiful guitar I've ever owned. And I tried it with a few companies and they were just kind of like, yeah, just reroute your guitar. But then DiMarzio was like, no, you got it. No flange or whatever it's called. And just put it in the mail like next day. And I love it. This is a really, really cool pickup. Very fucking, it just gets the neck pickup lead stuff done really well. But yeah, so this is the drop A guitar. I use this
now, is that a different scale length than the other, like the G.V. stuff? So is that like the longer Fender style scale length?
Yeah, so this is 20, the other one is 24.8. This one's 25.6. I think I'm getting that right. So yeah, that's part of the reason I did the drop A and G stuff on this guitar for tour. I may change that. I'd like to kind of play around with which guitar sounds best for which tuning, but just as far as practicality of like trying to get that low note going, it just seemed to make sense to play on this guitar, and it sounds sick. I use it on Trust, Crux, Omega Days, so it was getting a pretty good chunk of the set towards the end of touring.
Let's see what it has to say.
Yeah. Let's go with this guy.
it sounds heavy and thick, but it's also,
Yeah.
like you said, it's still articulate. It's still, you can hear the notes when you're playing those last chords.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, definitely the most beautiful guitar I've ever owned. You know, it makes me want to practice more because I feel like I need to earn owning a guitar this nice. You know, but it's all maple. The neck is dyed maple, and yeah, I'm just like pretty obsessed with it, to be honest. But I also was using this in standard tuning with Riot for the last few Riot tours I was doing, and it was awesome to have in standard tuning. I'm not like much of a dive bomb kind of trick guy, but just like they had a lot of stuff in sets that would just be kind of, yeah, like the toilet flushes in between songs. I could just fuck around with the. It's just so much fun to have, you know. And actually, this next record that we just finished guitars, and I mean it this time, is this guitar is all over it. So that'll be the first record that people actually like hear it recorded for real. And I got a couple of whammy bar moves on there, so that's like that's a new thing for Moontooth.
Well, cool, man. Do you want to move on to another guitar?
Yeah. Let's get through the other ones. So those are my 3 Vigiers. I'm trying to think if another cool thing is these string trees are really, really nice and really, it's just like almost looks like the end of a string. 5-way selector. Just trying to make sure I touch all the bases here, but I think I did. Beautiful fucking guitar.
Now you grab the next one, Nick. I'm curious, when you mentioned before about the GVs, you said that the weight was good. Now, were you looking for, they look like a thinner Les Paul, so were they light? Because you guys on stage is like a full contact sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, here's my standard, and here's my 90 standard, and here's the Vigier. It's definitely thinner, but the weight difference in this one is not that different. I don't know exactly.
Okay.
This is a heavy guitar, and I do want the guitar to be heavy. I feel like lighter guitars, I don't know, tend to get hurt more. This one's a little lighter, but comparable. So yeah, I don't. Okay. This is my Les Paul standard that I pretty much cut my teeth on. I think I got it when I was like 13. It's a 1990, so it's like basically the same age as me, which I always thought was kind of funny. I was born in '89, so it's like this guitar, I feel like it's just a part of who I am. Yeah, I don't even have a strap for it. I'll plug it in really quick. I don't know where this.
Yeah, what are the pickups on there? They look like they're, aftermarket, something you did.
Well, the neck pickup is stock.
Okay.
The bridge pickup, it just went bad. I don't even remember. It was a very long time ago, but it just started to it lost all its bass and just sounded like shit. And I dropped a Duncan Custom in there, and that's been there for 15 years or something. But yeah, just. This is actually all over the new record too. I mean, I still just love playing solos on it. It feels very much like the guitar I learned how to play guitar on, you know, like it feels, it feels like me a little bit. You want to hear a little bit?
Yeah, let's give it a taste test.
Do a little yoga move so I can balance here, but here's the bridge. I forgot it's in this is in the standard drop B for the new record. Kind of like I teach guitar, so I end up writing a lot of songs in standard. But we've played in drop tuning for so long that it always just ends up moving lower, just almost out of convenience. And sometimes a lot of times it sounds heavier when you move it lower, but I was kind of I wanted to get some new keys that we haven't played in on the record. And I don't know, sometimes when it gets dropped lower, it gets a little darker and a little muddier, a little sludgier. And some of the songs I wrote, I really wanted to be snappier and more aggressive, almost the guitar to kind of sit more up here and not be doing the low doom thing, but real bitey. And I don't know, it was just fun to have a new tuning. So this is in that. And then, any more questions on this one?
So how would you describe that real quick? You had the peanut butter sound before, so how would you describe like the top layer?
Like what type of food? I don't know. I don't know. It's just like, I started to kind of just appreciate, I think from playing with Riot and playing in standard tuning, 2 guitars, and kind of just learning, and we're playing Marshall JCM 800s. I have one of those here now. you know, it's like the guitar is occupying a very specific space, you know, and sometimes those amps would sound really kind of MIDI and like way too like harsh mids and stuff. But once the band was like locked into a riff, it would just fill everything perfectly. And I kind of just like was having more fun, like keeping the guitar in its normal sort of space of frequency range or whatever. But I still had the B on there, so it's still low and chunky. But I don't know, it's just tighter, snappier. The guitars are easier to play a little bit. Maybe the opposite of peanut butter. It would be like, I don't know, what's another good word we use? Bitey and just snarly. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tons of. I don't use a whole lot of like actual technical terms. I have Ray for that. And then last up for guitars, this was after the Les Paul. This was my first kind of not metal guitar. This is a Aerodyne Telecaster from I think 2005 or something like that. I just was like, I didn't really know what I was buying. I just like knew I wanted something different, and I just thought this guitar looked cool. It's got the P90 in the neck, which is like an interesting change on a Tele. But this single, I don't actually know what this. It's both stock. I don't even know what this single coil is, but it is very mean sounding with the drop B tuning. I'll throw it in for a sec.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've maybe only gigged with this a couple times, but I use it, you know, to teach mostly. But I ride a lot on it. It's really light and plays. It's just so thin and just, I don't know. I really love Teles in general, but this is a workhorse, this guitar. What have I got going on here? Like the standard drop B just is like, it's a little just meaner for some reason. The A is lower, but it's kind of just, it sounds like fat guy riffs, you know, and this is more like like angry skinny guy riffs, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, I'm excited for people to hear those two new songs on the record. They're definitely like a bit of a departure, or not departure, but like we took a little bit of a risk, like change the tuning and try something a little different. So we'll see.
It's a continual evolution of Moontooth. It's not one thing or the other. It's just you guys growing. Yeah, for sure. And like depending on the set, you know, I kind of just put these guitars here because we were recording with them anyway. But I don't know. Like this will probably stay, you know, D standard. That will stay drop A. But as far as which guitar will do that tuning, I still got to kind of experiment it, practice, and figure out exactly which one works the best with the rig. I kind of dial the rig into the G.V. Rock, the colorful one that I played first. And that one, if I dial it into that one, everything else seems to work well with it. But so yeah, which guitar will come out with me, I'm not exactly sure. But cool. All right, Nick, I see a Marshall and high watt. I know that you've been a high watt guy for a long time, but I used to know that you had a 5150. So what's the change here with the Marshall?
So the Marshall, I'm still using the high watt. That's the primary Moontooth head and has been for a long time. This JCM 800, me and Ray split custody of, and it's basically, we use it all over the new record. We bought it from Mike Flint's from Riot, actually. And it's like, I haven't exactly figured out whether I wanted to try to do a stereo, like run both heads, have a cab on either side of the stage. But as soon as we got this head, COVID basically happened, and we didn't get a chance to try it. So now that the record's done and we're going to get back in rehearsals, I'm going to experiment with seeing how that works. I did one day of blending them, and they're different animals, but you know, they're both just so sick. They work great together. So we did use this combination on the record a bunch, especially on leads. The JCM 800 sounds awesome on leads. But yeah, this is actually I get to correct something because on that Premier Guitar interview, I called this a 74. It's actually 76. My friend was making fun of me for a while for messing that up. But yeah, this is a 76 DR103, and it's basically early days of Moontooth. I had a JCM 2000, and it was breaking on me all the time. And then I needed to borrow a head at a gig, and my friend Paul from this band Black Blizzard was like, "You should use my high watt," and I'd never used one before. And at the time, I was still just using like the orange channel on the Marshall, or even maybe the green even. With this, take a quick second to I don't have it on my board at the very moment, but the Fuzzrocious Demon, which is now the Demon King. At the time, it was OC Demon, I think. But I was just like amazed by how well it took all my effects and just how much it filled a room in a way I'd never done with my guitar before. It was like immediately like I could feel it like bouncing off the back wall and hitting me, and like I think my band was a little frustrated with it for a little while, but so yeah, this thing has had a bit of a journey since then.
How
yeah,
so?
Well, I think if you saw Moontooth in the early days when I first got this head, you probably only heard this head and nobody else. But so like, you know, getting the master volume where I need it to kick the power section on, and also, you know, having a very dynamic band and a very dynamic singer who needs to be heard, you know, for the full effect of the show. Like that was always a tricky thing. And for a little while, we were on tour with Intronaut, and I kept blowing fuses on it, and I couldn't figure out why. And I ended up getting it, bringing it down to just 2 tubes and 50 watts, and it stopped doing that. I also had there's a guy, Jack Kowalowitz, who makes rock and roll amps. They're called on Long Island, but he's also my amp tech, and he did a mod for the bias, so it I don't know, whatever, just so it runs a little less hot and stopped burning fuses out and stuff. But yeah, bringing it down to 50 watts helped. I got more breakup at a lower volume. And then even still though, like 50 watts was too much. And, you know, I think that thinking when you're younger is like the bigger the venue, the more you're going to get to crank it up. Right. But then you learn it's like, no, you want to be controlled by the PA. So, our last tour, one of our last tours before COVID, we were out with Animals as Leaders, and I was having a really hard time playing some of these bigger kind of theater spaces and getting the power section where I wanted it. And so I knew I needed an attenuator eventually. Well, actually, before I even get into that, so I run the high watt with the channels jumped, and the normal volume and the brilliant volume is a big part of how I'll EQ more low end chunk, or more the brilliant has more of the top end, and that's kind of where where it meets the distortion on my pedal board is where, you know, what I'm looking for, you know, where to like kind of tweak things just a little bit for a room, if it's like a darker room or bassier stage or whatever. Like the normal and brilliant volume is pretty much, I really like the master at about 10 or 11 o'clock, which until I got this attenuator was almost impossible at most shows, you know. Sound guys would look at me like, are you serious right now? Like, what are you doing? And they'd be like, can you come down more? I'm like, a little bit. No, come down more. It's like, no, sorry.
I just can't.
I just can't, dude. No, I mean, I would, but, you know, there would be a certain point where I know that the master, you know, I would just lose the balls of the amp. Like, I would just feel, now I'm listening to it out of a monitor that sounds really thin, and it would just screw up the show. So it was always like a kind of a weird balancing act of everything. But, yeah, so that's the high watt. You'll maybe when we get back on the road, people will hear this JCM 800, but we'll see. It might just end up being a backup to this for now, but I'm hoping to like do the stereo mix because we got some really awesome results on the record blending those two heads.
Now, what is the attenuator on top there? Because I can't really make it out in the Zoom call.
So this is a Fryette Power Station 2.
Okay.
I met Neil Osberg at NAMM. And I punished him about Sound City amps and because I knew Mutoid Man guys, and they all played Sound Cities, and I wanted to punish him about those. And he was talking to me about these other things, and the valvulator I tried, which was really interesting and cool. But this was the thing that I was like, read all these good reviews, and I also I have my uncle and Mike from Riot are like close to me, and they, you know, they're like total gearheads, and I had tried like a few other attenuators, and I could feel the kind of the tone suck of it a little bit, but they all swore that this thing was like the shit, and it really is. It's I can run it on, I guess I'll jam a little bit, but this is like basically the secret weapon right now because I can push this high watt as hard as I want, and I have like a new volume. It's also got a presence and depth knob, which I'll tweak a little bit. So now I got like an EQ here, I have the presence and depth on this, and then I have the Friedman BEOD, so I got an EQ on there. So a lot of just tiny pushes of mids and bass until it just sounds right for the room, for the stage. But yeah, this is like a totally like exciting thing. I mean, You can do DI out. I can use it as an effects loop. It's all tubes. There's 2 KT88s in there, so it's all tube attenuator. Lots of bells and whistles that I probably will maybe never get to, but is like a cool, like the most important volume knob I've ever bought, basically. But it sounds, it doesn't affect the high watt sound at all. If anything, it makes it sound better. Like we even use it in the studio just because it adds like almost this cool little bit of extra saturation and presence to the high watt sound. So yeah, love that thing. I'm really stoked that that worked out.
Before we have you go ahead and start ripping and talk about your pedals, what is the cab there? Is that still the Crank 412 or is that a different cab?
Yeah, that's Crank Revolution cab. So Ray bought this cab. I think this is another joint custody item here. Like if something goes wrong, we'll split the money because he uses it at the studio at Westfall. He uses it to record. But yeah, it's a Crank Revolution cab. A funny story with this cab is he bought it from Tim Howley, who plays in Fit for an Autopsy now. And years ago when he was playing a band called The World We Knew, and they bought it from Amur. And when it belonged to The World We Knew, their trailer got hit by a tractor trailer and exploded on the highway, and this thing survived it somehow. And so some of that damage is from that. Some of it's from me climbing on it for years. Paul Motisi, again, who painted this and also did our album cover, helped me get this. This is the symbol from our album Crux that we came up with. This is the conceptual representation of the message of that record. And he put that on this big metal grate on here. Ray had swapped 2 of the speakers are the stock Eminence speakers that came in the Revolution cabs, and 2 of them are Eminence Wizards that he swapped out just to put something different in there. So live, I would try to get, if we're using house sound guy, I'll ask if they don't mind, or if we have our own guy, I have them mic both cab speakers in there so that they can do a little extra blending and just try to get the bigger sound out of the PA. But I think mostly we go for the Wizards when it's just one cab or nothing.
Cool, man. And so now this is pedalboard time. I think the best part, and we can start with your amp, we'll get your clean amp sound, so no pedals through it, so we can kind of see where you're sitting with the high watt. But, like songs like Thumb Spike or Igneous, they are like a masterclass in dynamics. And so I'm curious how you not only match the volumes, but I assume you have your pedals, or do you have a switcher that enables you to make such quick changes to the tone and volume in a set?
So yeah, I mean, my chain starts with the Ernie Ball volume and my Boss tuner. Sorry. So volume pedal goes right into the Wampler Ego compressor, which that I think is a big part of that, is going from finger-picked clean stuff to, I don't know what that sound is. Something's frying. So that was a big part of like kind of making that happen and dealing with that big volume dip between parts and stuff. And but now I have kind of a new gain staging. I have the Wampler runs into the Archer, the J Rocket Archer. It's like the Klon style pedal, and that always stays on because it's set pretty low. But always to that was one of those things that was like, okay, I can't go all the way clean because it'll just too much of a volume suck. So that just is pushing the amp a little bit. And I also really loved the way it colored the Friedman BEOD. It just added this kind of, here's a word for you, a slippery top end. It's like it got rid of some of the boxiness and made it a little bit more wild and interesting to me. I was using the regular BEOD for a long time, but now I have the BEOD Deluxe, which is like hasn't seen a show yet, but I'm really excited for that because in the past I would have another distortion. I'd have that Fuzz Roche's Demon, or I have a Nunez dual range boost I was using to kind of bridge that gap. But now the BEOD Deluxe has 2 channels. And they added a mid knob, which I was like really excited. As soon as I saw the Deluxe, I was like, okay, I have to buy that, because that was the one thing about the regular BEOD I always wondered is like, why would you have a bass and a treble? Why wouldn't you want a mid knob in there too? And just that little bit of extra control freakness, like just to kind of like just to get things as perfect as you can get them. So yeah, here I'll play a little bit.
Yeah, as I say, walk us through the different stages of like distortion and volume you got.
Sure. Yeah. So I just wanted to show you real quick on the power station. If it has a low like bedroom mode. So this is like my high watt at like combo, like tiny combo amp volume, which I just think is really cool. But so here's nothing. That's just straight into the high watt. Well, with the power station, but I have some compression. So that's pretty clean and it sounds awesome. But you know, usually with going from the super loud, aggressive sound to that can be a little bit too much of a disparity there. So I always have the Archer on. Just slightly dirty. I mean, to me, that's slightly dirty. I also, I'll use the volume pedal, the VP Junior. If like it feels a little too hot for a part, I'll just bring it back a little bit. So I like the volume pedal is a big part of sort of fine-tuning the gain stages. So anyway, that's just the Archer and the compressor, and then here's the first channel, the lower gain channel on the Friedman. Oh. And then the hotter channel. And I have that all running into a looper. I have a 3-channel looper that was built by my friend Joe Sanders. It's a Mammoth Electronics, just analog looper. So the first loop is all the gain stuff.
Now, would you say that last bit we heard was like the most extreme of your like distortion, gain, volume?
Yeah, as far as until you get to like octaves and phasers and all the really brutal, like harsh kind of stuff when you're standing right in front of the amp. I mean, that's the hottest sound.
Now you mentioned some weird and like octave stuff. Is that what's going on with Queen Wolf?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of all over. Yeah, we did like a higher octave to get more of a chimey.
Yeah, it sounds like a steel drum.
Yeah, it sounds like a steel drum. That was kind of accidental, but yeah. So we've always messed around with that. I mean, like I've always had like whammy pedals since I was 15, 16. You know, like loving all the metal bands of the 90s and early 2000s. Like, of course, you had a whammy pedal, and eventually I would just use the octave harmony setting, which was cool because you could use the cradle to jump the octaves. But for the most part, I just started to love that sound. But in the studio, we'll experiment with high octave stuff. But live, I generally just use the Electro Harmonics Pitchfork for my low octave harmony stuff, which is on this second loop. All my modulation stuff is on the second loop of the 3-lace looper. So here's just clean. That's just the clean octave. We actually did like a little shootout with different octave pedals, and the Pitchfork just tracks the best, and the separation of the two notes I feel like is exactly what I'm looking for. It can do other things like the latch mode where it's like momentary and stuff, but I don't use it for that. I just use it for chunk, the chunk note. If I ever want to do the whammy thing, I now have like the whammy ricochet, which kind of is in one part of the set. If I do something like it's pretty much there just so I can do that sometimes.
Just for fun.
Just for fun, just to like get that ear-piercing like high note, again like Dimebag Darrell kind of influence there. Offered Blood, I use that. Igneous, I use that, and then just to mess with people sometimes. Also on that loop is the Phase 90, which is like, to me, that's like the stoner rock doom influence, and of course like Van Halen and whatever. But I like being able to turn those two on and then hit this. Whoop. If you've seen us, then you've heard that sound a bunch. I mean,
we had talked off camera before we started filming that you mentioned you saw this Sleep Rick Rundown with Matt Pike, and he uses the phaser to extreme effect like that too.
Yeah, I think he was really the influence. I think I saw Sleep at Terminal 5 many years ago, and I mean, obviously the octave and phaser is a big part of that, but I bought the Spatial Delivery the Earthquaker devices. You know that pedal? Because I think I saw Sleep and he just came out and just. And I was just like, what the hell is that pedal that he's using? Because, the beginning of the Sleep show is just for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is the best thing ever. I could listen to you play that chord for 3 hours. So that's my newest, like, fun kind of thing. That hasn't seen a show yet either, but, intros and outros to songs and stuff like that just to... we try to like have as little dead time as possible. We leave it like a couple moments for John to talk to the audience, but in general, we want to keep the show like moving. So I have a couple tricks on the board to just bridge gaps. I have one delay that's just there for long, just endless delay, and I have the super ego. I guess we'll move on to that chain if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So the second loop, was the octaves and phaser, and now the third loop is all my delay stuff. So the basic delay sound for Moontooth has always been the carbon copy and Holy Grail together. MXR carbon copy, analog delay, of course, is like a standard, just a beautiful sounding delay pedal. And then the Holy Grail, it's all set pretty low. I've only ever used the spring setting on the Holy Grail, and the switch actually like broke off. So I need a new one, but like it's perfectly set to where it needs to be. So here's just the carbon copy and the Holy Grail. Which is kind of the lead sound too. If I'm doing a solo, that's probably what I would use. It's on. It's not super crazy aggressive, but it's working. The newest delay I have is the Empress Echo System. I met some of those guys at NAMM, and I'm still getting kind of comfortable with it. It's really amazing, like how many presets you can have and how many different delays. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 15 different types of delay, and it's my first delay pedal like that. I've always had things that were pretty simple. I do like simple, but I'm enjoying like getting to make presets, and we use this a lot in the studio. I have it set for the tape setting right now. This is without the Holy Grail and the carbon copy. For a little while, I was using the. Let me see. This is a delay and reverb together. That's just on the Empress. That more or less does the job of with the carbon copy and Holy Grail we're doing. So I've done tours without those and just using this. I'm still figuring out exactly how I want these things to all work together, and depending on the set and everything. But this is everything on. This would be like the most delay for like what I practically use in a show. So nothing like too extreme right now, but if I want to, like if I need time to tune between songs or something, I have this Digitech digital delay, which that's one of the first pedals I've ever bought. So I've had it since I was like 15, and I just never had a problem with it. I'm probably now it'll break, but I just have it at the end of the chain, so whatever I do at the end of a set. Okay, and I could just either switch guitars. I hit the volume pedal, I'll switch guitars, or I'll get the next one in tune, and that thing can just make noise. And if I feel like it's starting to run out, I'll just like make some more noise, and that'll get me ready for the next song. You know, again, kind of trying to not have any dead space in the set. Another thing that's really fun for that, and I think I've talked about pretty much everything else on the board so far, but is the Electro Harmonix Super Ego, the synth engine. We kind of, in the studio and now live, only use this for like this cool freeze and then morph kind of glissando function that it does. But it does a lot of cool things, but this is basically how we use it. I'll hit a chord. And I can just hit the long delay so that I can do whatever I got to do before we start the next song. And yeah, so that's what the live board is looking like right now. But once we start really hitting a set and get back on the road, I'll probably manipulate it a little bit more. But this is kind of where I was at. I was telling you off camera, like we just finished guitars, so this is was kind of the best time for this to happen because all my stuff was all over the place. You know, I was only picking off a pedal every time we need to use one. I also have like a Univibe MXR, which is another fun thing. I'll switch out for like the spatial delivery depending on what set we're doing or that's like kind of the fun section of the board anyway. So whatever I feel like throwing in there. But yeah, so like this came at the perfect time to get ready to, start hitting the new songs and get a set ready for hopefully summer or fall. Depending on.
Would you say a lot of these pedals got used on your tracks on the new record that'll be out, hopefully this year and maybe early next year?
Yeah, the Archer Klon got used on like every solo, mostly through the JCM 800. That just get the perfect kind of like classic rock lead sound between those two things. Actually, the Archer I bought for Riot because like Riot's the total opposite of Moontooth. Riot is I bring a tuner and a tube screamer, and a Les Paul and standard, now my Vigiers, but like that was it. We would rent, it's mostly European dates and fly dates and stuff. So we'd rent JCM 800s or whatever Marshall we could get, and then tube screamer in front of it. Sometimes I'd bring a delay or reverb for a solo or something, but not always, and anyway, like, I was trying to update my tube screamer. I was like trying different ones, and I just went to Guitar Center and just punished the dude for like an hour and a half, just to like, let me try this one, let me try that one. And eventually he just gave me a bunch of them and I just put them all in a chain and A-B them. And the Archer just was so cool sounding, and not high gain, just like really just, it's so tight. And just like sounds great on leads and everything too. But yeah, so generally the Archer would run into my Friedman, into the high watt. Whoop, there's the high watt. And, we would, for the Marshall, it would either be, if we were doing a lead, we'd use the Archer, or for rhythm stuff, we'd often use a Maxon overdrive in front of that, which just sounds just super tight. Also at Westfall here, they have a Diesel VH4, which we used in conjunction with the high watt. And then that was you brought up the 5150 earlier. So I never owned one, but basically either at the studio, like there was one that was here, and then on the last record we would use that, or we also rented a Soldano for a little while, a SLO 100, and we'd blend that with the high watt, and those amps would kind of serve as the tight bite top end, and the high watt would be sort of the girth of the sound, and that was in a nutshell what we were trying to do. And now for this record, that became either the Diesel or a Marshall, but we also played around with a Mesa. Ray also has we had a Mesa Mark V that we were playing around with for a couple days, and then we had Ray has like a Marshall Plexi style amp that he custom built with his father, like a Seria Tone. I think they sell like the kit, and that thing sounds crazy. Also, I have a Fender Vibro Champ from the '60s that I kind of just inherited by accident, and that gets used on a lot of the clean stuff. It's like one of the nicest sounding like amps I've ever heard. As far as clean, as far as that classic Fender sound, when we're looking for that, we'll bust out the Vibro Champ and little tiny amp. Funny story with that, real quick, is my mom was working at a church in the rectory, and they were doing like kind of donate your junk, and she became friends with this older man, and she mentioned that her son was a musician, and he said, "Oh, your son's a musician? I got speakers for you." And she just came home with this beautiful 60s vibro champ. I mean, it was like a little beat up, but
yeah.
I was like, "How the hell did you get this?" You know? And she was like, "This man said she wanted you to have it." I was like, "Okay, cool." And I've had it ever since. I recently just replaced the power cable and the switch because it was electrocuting the shit out of me, and I just kind of got sick of that. I was like, I never wanted to change anything on it, but then it just came down to practicality. Like, all right, I don't want to be electrocuted anymore.
Yeah, you don't want to die.
Yeah, and so Jack Kavalowitz, who does all my service, he retubed and capped it, but I have all the original pieces if I ever want it. But it still sounds just amazing. It's like just the most beautiful clean, and the trem on it, you know, the vibrato or whatever. That's just great sounding, you know. So those get the most use in the studio between the high watt, and then some other B amp, you know, that we switch out a lot. And then for cleans, the Vibro Champ, or sometimes the Plexi, actually. And the high watt sounds great for cleans too. So we are very meticulous with guitar tones and sounds. We spend a lot of time. We were a little more streamlined this time as far as like we're doing all the rhythm tracks. And then once all that's done, you can start doing solos. And once that's done, you can start doing overdubs. Because on the last record, it was fun to kind of really get into a song and set up a tone and then get into overdubs and stuff. But you'd end up sinking a lot of time into the setup of it and tweaking and going, what about this guitar? What about that guitar? And stuff. So this time we tried to be a little bit more like, you know, heavy stuff, clean stuff, leads, solos, you know, I mean, overdubs.
Gotcha. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. And like you said, it sounds we struck right at the right moment having you set up and doing all the studio stuff. So I appreciate you, Nick, hanging out in the studio and talking to us about gear. If people want to check out and keep up to date with maybe some shows happening or eventually a new record, where should they go online and check you guys out?
Moontooth.org, Moontooth's on Facebook, Moontooth's Instagram, all that stuff. It's perfect. You know, we're easy to find. I mean, you know, Moontooth.merchnow.com is the best place to pick up like some music if you're into that kind of thing. But you know, Spotify, Apple Music, it's all good. As far as like gigs coming up, I would just stay up to date with social media stuff. Hopefully, we'll have some new album news soon too. And thank you, Chris. Thank you, Premier Guitar. This is like an honor. I watch these all the time, so I'm really grateful to be featured.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much. Everyone out there, stay safe. Keep rocking.